I want to know, and hopefully, I don't think we'll come to an answer here, but a week ago, roughly, Aonuma made a comment to Famitsu in an interview. Now, this interview was obviously about Twilight Princess HD, which just came out in Japan last week.
And apparently outsold Wind Waker HD in its first week.
If that's that, wow, really?
I read that somewhere.
Okay. No, I mean, I'd believe
Which
it.
surprised me too, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no,
well, I think the
it.
market has probably, I mean, the install base after Splatoon has probably grown quite a bit, though, right? Since Wind Waker came out, so that might be a part of it. I would
That could be it.
imagine.
Okay. Well, so during this interview, though, Famitsu asked, so how's Zelda coming along? And at the time, he said this. The key word here is that this would be something new. That he acknowledged Ocarina of Time was a huge leap for the Zelda series, and since then, he thinks the base of our secret sauce has always been Ocarina of Time. Like it was something that you kind of knew as a Zelda fan, but you never really had anyone say it, right? Or
we said it all the time.
Oh, you guys did. Sorry.
Constantly. Yeah.
I feel like I haven't heard it enough, and I've heard you guys plenty of times. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think that's something that every Zelda fan. I mean, I think this is Nintendo catching up with where I think Zelda fans probably were before Skyward Sword, where it was like, okay, we're after Twilight Princess is kind of the like really retreating back to the model, and that was great that we enjoyed that. Now let's go on to the next thing. And then Nintendo tried one more time. They had like some motion controls and did some stuff, but yeah, I think like that's at least what we've been talking about a lot on the E4 Play podcast.
That's right.
Check your local listings. What we've talked about a lot since before then was like, it's time to like shake up the formula. As much as we love that formula, as much as we loved Ocarina of Time.
Well, this is the exciting part, right?
Yeah.
Direct quote. But this time, the change in flavor will be like going from Japanese food to Western style food. Perhaps players will be surprised. And he's been teasing this, right? I have something in mind for an open world game. And I really can't wait to share it. And by God, you need to share it already, because I don't know if I could take much more of this.
It's a scary. I mean, it's interesting. It's tantalizing, but it's also scary, right?
Yes.
Right.
Like, if that means mixing up the way the world feels and giving you like a different sense of freedom, then I like it, right? But let's also not forget that, like, the original Legend of Zelda pioneered that freedom that we see in games like Elder Scrolls, right? And so I want to make sure it's not just we realize all the good stuff that has happened in Western RPGs, and I love them. I play all the big Bethesda games and everything. But I want that unique touch that this Japanese development team brought to the formula back then.
But do you think? I think a lot of people interpreted this as Western influences.
So
I got worried by that. I don't think that's what he meant at all.
I think the analogy, like, it's a little scary to some people because they're like, I kind of like the Japanese food or whatever. And so
I don't want hamburgers in my Zelda.
I think maybe that was a little intentional because obviously open world games are more prevalent right now in the West, and it wasn't accidental. But I think, to your point, Per, I think they're incapable of not
being Nintendo.
Not being that, right? Like, I think in a lot of ways, we talked about this a lot too. It's exactly what you're talking about. It's returning a lot to like Zelda 1.
Yeah.
Very first NES Zelda, right? Is what we're kind of expecting from this game. And that kind of freedom.
With
Link Between Worlds
tried that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was them experimenting with some of the kind of concepts of doing things out of order, quote unquote.
I think that was their way. He may have even said this before, I don't know, but if not, like, I kind of invented this quote in my head. But I mean, I think he basically, in Link Between Worlds, is like, in order for us to understand it, we have to make it ourselves once. And that's why it's so similar to A Link to the Past. It's like, let's make an old school Zelda game that doesn't really hold your hand, that kind of embraces the basic mechanics of what made Zelda Zelda back then. And then now we have that experience. Now let's take that and kind of put that into a new Zelda. And I think also, like, personally, and we have talked about this a ton on our podcast, but like it's definitely going to be, I think, we know it's going to be open world, right? But it's definitely going to be like a throwback, I think, to the first Zelda. And I think, like, after playing Dark Souls, to me, Dark Souls is the modern version of the first Zelda, like, in a lot of ways. And I feel like that, I don't know if Aonuma's ever played Dark Souls, but I kind of hope he did, because I feel like that, to me, is where I wanted Zelda to be going in the first place. So not Dark Souls 2.
Yeah,
Dark Souls 1.
no. But that every time that comes up, I feel like that scares a lot of people, too, because they're just like, well, Dark Souls is too hard. And they latch on.
We're not talking
to,
about
like,
difficulty. So a lot of people equate Dark Souls to difficulty, but you're talking more about like the freedom and also the interconnecting of the world and
the ability to go anywhere. Like, I want to be able to go wherever the hell I want when the new Zelda starts. I don't want to be taken along a path. I don't want some sidekick like telling me stuff every 2 minutes. Like there was a part in Skyward Sword where like I forgot what like object she was. You know, your sidekick thing.
Oh,
inside
Fi.
Skyward
She
Sword.
comes out of your sword.
She
Yeah,
like
yeah.
before I even had a chance to look, she's like, maybe you should go around the corner and look for a treasure or something. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? Like
Yeah.
that's not what I want.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I feel like this time though, what we're hoping for and expecting at least is like to be able to go anywhere, do anything, and have an interconnected world. It doesn't have to be super hard,
Yeah.
but it also should not hold your hand at all.
Yeah,
you know?
and as much as I love the old, the old gameplay elements, like when you see a hookshot target, you know, oh, there's a hookshot in the game. I would love them to shake that up too, so that
Right.
you can't immediately read the landscape and know what to do. But I find one thing is really interesting. First of all, look at the last Metal Gear, right? A Japanese-made game that feels very, very Western in a lot of ways, right? It still has that weird, quirky kind of Kojima factor to it,
Yeah.
but it has this element that does feel different from an Elder Scrolls or Fallout. Like in a lot of encounters in Western open world RPGs feel like they're generated on the fly, whereas like I do think Japanese games have a little bit more of that kind of scripted element that creates this more careful pacing. And I always remember Majora's Mask. Like you follow the postman. And like it just feels so cool. Like you get the sense that this guy is on this path, and within that game, it makes so much sense because you travel back in time, and so you got this Groundhog Day feel of
Right.
like, oh my God, he does this every day, so I have to disrupt that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a clever thing. Like I haven't seen that in another game,
No,
and
that-
so I'm
yeah.
hoping they preserve
Yeah.
that in this open world. That there is this kind of path element rather than random encounter, giant spider comes out of the hills and you defeat it, right? Like which is a little bit more Western style.
Or
RPG.
or Dodongo again or
Yeah.
something like that. And to Majora's Mask credit, that is the best town I think they've ever done.
Oh, yeah.
A place where like everyone had a little routine. There were all these little missions in
was
place.
alive,
I do think it will be interesting. I mean, even going back to talking about the Ocarina of Time setting the mold and stuff, I do think it'll be interesting to see if the next one opens with you in a village and how quickly you get out of that village. If they set the village as, again, here's the tutorial thing, because I think that's also getting a little tired.
Yeah, yeah.
So it would be interesting to see how quickly, how it's going to teach you a tutorial,
I
type
wanted
stuff.
to start the way the manual did on Zelda 1. It's like, I forget exactly what it said. It's like a long time ago, the world's in age of chaos, and like this dude just showed up. And I just want to like show up. Let me just like, I want to start the game
No
walking
sword,
through the woods
like
or
just like
something.
OG
You know what I
Zelda,
mean?
not even have
Yeah.
a sword.
You
You
don't
gotta
know how
find,
you
you gotta
got
find your
there.
sword or
Yeah,
a stick or
nobody's telling
something
you.
first. Yeah,
No
exactly.
one knows who you are.
Nobody's
maybe.
calling you
Yeah.
sleepyhead. Yep.
I do want to say too, though, that and this is the thing, and we'll end on this, I guess, but the way Aonuma chose to reveal this game, or the way Nintendo chose to reveal this game, has been running through my mind constantly, because we have seen plenty of Zelda reveals in our time, and it is always Link in green tunic doing Link in green tunic things, heroic things, like I mean, who can forget the 2004 Zelda reveal where that game eventually became Twilight Princess, but every time I feel that the constant has been just this thing you've always seen before in a familiar way. And here you have the next Legend of Zelda, no tunic, on horseback. The horse has always been a thing, whatever. Looking badass, shooting arrows and doing like flipping off horses and things. I mean, jumping off of horses,
Flipping
not
off
flipping them
horses.
off.
Up yours, horse.
Up yours, horse. No, but it just sticks out in my mind as like this thing that. Are you trying to say something here? Are you trying to tell me that I'm going to be doing super cool stuff from the start before I even put on that outfit? Are you trying to say that? I can't wait to talk to him again. And I don't, God willing, E3, this is it, right? You're going to have something to
I
say.
hope so.
So you're talking about the reveal where they're sitting in front of the screen in the back, right? Like you've got like the world. Do you mean like
And then
the
it was-
original reveal and then Link comes in and they cut to the footage, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that reveal was really interesting because they used Zelda as a wallpaper, man. Like they had it behind them the whole time, and I think the point was it's about the world.
Exactly.
Like, this
Right.
time it's
See,
really
but I
don't
about
know.
the
It's
world.
living
Link
and
wasn't even
breathing
there.
wall
It was
where-
just grass and
No,
the
no, well,
the
he's
thing.
just sitting there the whole time. But then why not have Link in Link armor or Link outfits doing Link-like things? Like I didn't get that from this, and I almost feel like maybe I'm getting my hopes up. But I do wonder if that's part of what he's trying to address here.
I know it's heresy to some fans, but I actually would have been really happy and will still be real happy if it turns out that Link is a woman. Like, just because it's like, mix it up. Like,
Yeah.
give us something new and different. Maybe
Not
there's some
heresy on this
story.
podcast. You are absolutely right.
Yeah, I
would
would
be
love
super
like
happy.
just to have it be different.
Yeah, and to
Yeah.
explain that, I mean, the viewpoint we've said this before is that it's a repeating storyline with a different hero, right? Like it's not like Samus; it's one character. Link is a different
Right.
Link in so many stories.
Right.
Like someone who's chosen and then picks up the sword and the tunic and becomes the hero. So I do think it would work with that. It almost feels like it's too on the nose, though. You know, Nintendo doesn't do things just because you're expecting it.
Right,
And like
right.
all the talk about whether the character in the demo is male or female, I bet it's, you know, it is going to be traditional Link. The other interpretation of the costume was, is this a game, again, going back to Western RPGs with more customization,
Yeah.
do you can you choose a little bit more what Link looks like?
Yeah.
You know, is it, you can wear the green tunic, but guess what? If you like these duds better, you can wear those, right?
Yeah. If it's going to be an open world game, and maybe something else they'll tack on more is like this idea of loot and upgrading armor and like wearing lots of different stuff.
And they've been playing around with upgrading items. I mean, Link Between Worlds, Skyward, those
Shields.
are systems they messed around with, you know, being able to sort of change the things that you got in the world. But we've got to go because I know you guys have a place to be. And I actually messed up at the start of this podcast because I did not start out by reminding people what you do. You guys work in Japan at 8-4.
We're just so well known and so famous that
me,
no introduction necessary.
At this point, you've been on this show before.
It's
I mean,
true.
both of you,
I have,
actually.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
you're returning guests. But if it's your first time listening, give them the elevator pitch. Who are you?
We both work at a company called 8-4 out of Tokyo. We do a lot of game localizations. We have worked on some Nintendo properties before, but we're here at GDC. We handle the Japanese speakers. We do lots of different stuff.
You handle, meaning you're translating in the,
That's
in the
right.
panels.
There's a
You're
caravan.
also making
and
sure
we're
nobody
walking
runs
them
into a
around.
car.
That's right. We hold their
drive on the
hands,
wrong
get
side
them
here.
here. We set up the talks and then walk people through the process and just get them here,
Great.
and then
Interpret for
handle the interpretation and stuff
what,
like that.
What was your last project that you worked on? Like
The Nintendo one was awesome.
What was the last Nintendo one?
The last big game was Xenoblade Chronicles X.
Oh, there you go. That was
which
a lot of work, huh?
Huge isn't, doesn't even begin to describe it. A project that we worked on for about a year. And we do little games too. We did like Neko Atsume, the mobile game, which is super popular right now.
Right.
So
That's cool.
from little mobile games to big RPGs.
You should translate Mother 3. That'd be nice.
We would love to translate Mother 3
That would be
Nintendo.
fun.
Okay.
But
Maybe we'll pool our money and we'll just pay you ourselves.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
But thanks a lot for having us on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for
Seriously,
coming in.
always a pleasure.
Yeah, no. And thank you, listener, for checking out and listening to Nintendo Voice Chat. We're a weekly show on IGN. You can leave us feedback by going to nvc@ign.com or head on over to iTunes, leave us a show review. Where can they find your wonderful work, gentlemen?
So the 8-4 Play podcast, you can find up on iTunes. That's a little podcast we do about Japanese games. Just games in Japan and Japanese games. But that's up every other week. You can also find us at 8-4.jp.
Yep.
Or on Twitter.
Twitter is 84play for the podcast, or I'm John TV.
And I'm Mark MacD.
And you are
I'm Pear.
on
IGN.
Twitter. And lastly, I'm at Jose_Otero. Thank you so much again for coming in, and we'll be back next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.
Goodbye.
Thanks.